Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jenny. I'm here today to share with you my June reading wrap up, and I'm starting today with my first finish, which was A Mountain Year, Nature Diary of a Wilderness Dweller by Chris Czajkowski. So this is a daily, seasonally divided diary, not every single day of the year, but divided up by month, probably 5 to 10 entries per month, interspersed with lovely sketches and drawings of the flora and fauna, animals that Chris encountered living in a really, really remote part of British Columbia, up in the mountains near the Alpine line. And this was mostly from the year 2005, although she shared near the end of the book that now at that time, her falls consisted of her leaving this area and going on book tour because she's a writer. And so she didn't spend, most of October, November in this area. So she used journals from a decade before to share some of that nature writing that she had done previously. So this is really lovely. It has lots of bird references, lots of references to the alpine flora that blooms at different times of year, the snowpack, she lives right on a lake, so she talks about that, cutting wood, building trails. She also runs a kind of nature off-grid business where people come. She was having woofers, which are organic workers for organic farms, and they would come and help her out, and then she'd also have paying guests who would come to stay in the cabins that she had built and hike and tour around and experience this very unique landscape. And so, yeah, I enjoyed this. I have to say, though, for me, a diary, I would hope for more personal reflection. I think that that's just a style that I prefer. So more of the person, less of the factual details. There's just a lot of factual details, like I saw this bird today, this squirrel went and fed on the feeder, this happened, that happened, but not a lot of like, I'm feeling tired today, or things like, or I'm wishing this would be happening, or, just like more personal reflection is kind of what I look for in these styles of books. So overall, I'm glad that I read it. It was interesting, but it wasn't one that I feel was super compelling in kind of from a personal perspective. And I know Chris has a lot of other books that she has written about her experience living there, so potentially maybe these other books have a bit more of that personal reflection in them than this one does. But this was a style that she'd always wanted to do, where she intersperses her sketches with her diary writings. Yeah, okay, so that was my first finish of June, and I will check in again with you when I have finished another book. Hey everyone, just wanted to check in because I finished Anil's Ghost by Ondaatje. So this story is set mostly in Sri Lanka. There are some parts that take place in kind of memories of the United States mostly. And we have three main characters. Anil, who was born in Sri Lanka and then immigrated, was educated in the UK and the United States, and is a forensic anthropologist. Is that what it's called? I don't remember exactly. I think it's forensic anthropologist or forensic investigator. She investigates bodies that for the origins of what happened to them. And then we have Sarath, who is the government anthropologist who investigates older bodies, who is paired up with Anil when she comes to Sri Lanka under the she's sent by an international human rights organization that are looking for evidence of murders and disappearances caused by the conflicts happening in Sri Lanka between 3 different factions. So you have the government and 2 different organizations, freedom fighters / terrorists, etc. And then we have, now I'm not going to remember his name properly, Gamini, who is Sarath's brother. There's a couple other important characters as well. So the narrative develops mostly between Sarath and Anil as they are investigating, and they find a body and they know that it's a recent murder. It's not an older murder. And the key here is that they're trying to figure out who this person is and do it without being disappeared themselves or being, put in jail by the government because the government doesn't want to admit what it's doing. And entangled with this is Anil's past, Sarath's past, and Gamini's past. I was really absorbed by this novel as soon as I started reading it. I was very compelled by the characters. Ondaatje's writing is very deep. He has a very introspective and deep way of engaging with character. And then you have this mystery of who Sarath is, of who the body is that they've found, who they refer to as Sailor. Somewhere in the middle of the novel, though, there's just more backstory about Sarath and Gamini. Mostly Gamini's backstory. I found he's a doctor, and so his perspective is very interesting because he's working in hospitals. He's seeing people coming in who've been injured and murdered in, these attacks. And so his perspective is very specific, but it's also woven in with their personal lives and their loves and their feelings and their childhoods and all these other things. And so that part of the novel kind of, for me, wandered a bit too much and took me away from Anil too much. I wanted to spend more time with her. I wanted more of her perspective. I wanted more of her reflections, and I wanted more of how they find out who Sailor is, this body, and all those things. And so the book didn't really take me to all the places I wanted to go, even though there were very beautiful parts. And I wouldn't say that this book is trying to explain the political situation as it has developed over the years in Sri Lanka either, but it is a perspective on them. And it does give you a very human sense. And I think this was similar when in Ondaatje's The English Patient, he's talking about real people and their lives and like how war and violence and political strife affects them. So he's not trying to tell you the details of this conflict. More, he's trying to tell you about real people who and how they were affected in their lives by these atrocities. So and it's kind of like a snippet in time novel, I would say, as well. So it's like this is a very specific moment for Sarath and Anil and Gamini, and you are privy to that and you get to see into that, but it's not going to tell you it's not going to wrap up their lives in a pretty bow for you or give you maybe a long view. It's more of a shorter snippet in time view. So I did enjoy it. I at the beginning I thought it was going to be a 5-star, and it didn't end up that for me because of the way the middle dragged. But I did think that the ending was quite good. I would have liked a little bit more again from Anil in the ending, but the ending had a very bittersweetness to it. And yeah, that is Anil's Ghost by Ondaatje. And I'll check in again with you when I have finished another book. Hello, everybody. I wanted to wrap up my audiobook with you for June, and that was The Royal Secret by Andrew Taylor. This is book 5 in the Marwood and Lovett series, which is a historical fiction murder mystery series that I love. I would say that book 5's plot, or some of the characters in the story, were not my favorite. I was a little bit irritated by the young girl. There's 2 young girls that kind of open the story. And I wasn't huge fan of them, of their narrative. So when I had to listen to their narrative, I got a little bit irritated sometimes. This book could have had more Marwood in it for me. I understand why Andrew Taylor does the plots the way he does. So, I still gave it 5 stars because it was very satisfying in the ending. I really, really liked. So, he's just really good at writing these stories. They're very entertaining. I listen to them really fast because I want to know what happens. There's only one more released, and I'm curious if he's writing another one right now. I may have to try out some of his other books to see if I like them as much as this one, but really, he just builds these characters and I'm so invested in them, and very interested to see what the next book brings, but I'm going to try my best to wait until next year to read it, because if I read them too fast and that's it, then it makes me sad. So that is The Royal Secret. All of these books are set in London. This one actually has some plot in France as well. During Charles II's reign, and so you get a lot of information, historical information specifically to that time period, and that situation. Charles II, his entourages, and his goings on in the court, and so it's very entertaining. And I'm really, really glad that I found these books and that I'm enjoying them so much, and that they bring me so much, they just wrap me up in them. And I love that feeling. And it's happened in every book that I've read of this series. So I do really think, if you like historical fiction, if you like, deep character development and a slow burn, try these. Yeah. Okay. I will check in again when I finish another book. Hi, everybody. So I finished Yoko by David Sheff, which is a biography, this morning, and we just had our final book club chat about it. In case you don't know, I run a book club on Patreon. We read books that are art center, or have some sort of a focus on art. So whether it's novels about artists, biographies of artists, or general history and art historical texts, that's where you can find it. The information is in the description box below. So for the months of April, May, and June, we read Yoko. This is a biography that is not super art historical focused. So while you get the full breadth of Yoko's life and her art practice, I would say that the author focused a bit more on the musical side of her art rather than the visual art. And even though that is in here, he does talk a lot about her art but she is such a multidisciplinary artist, working across genres, breaking a lot of barriers that way for people, that to capture it all in an under 300 page, or just at 300 pages, he definitely had to leave out some, analysis and things like that. But he did a ton of interviews. He had a personal relationship with Yoko himself, which he only really references in the beginning of the book. So anything pertaining to him and his relationship with her is really limited. But he has a sympathetic lens towards her, which I think she needs, because when you read about her life, the intense racism, sexism, and vitriol that was hurled at her from the time she met John and became married to him through his death and way beyond, because she probably continues to get death threats to this day. Her life, is very complex, very layered. She's a very complex and layered woman, and it was absolutely fascinating to read about her. I would encourage you to learn more about her work. She is one of the most uplifting and inclusive artists that I've ever read about. Her work is about connection. Her work is about expansion. Her work is about growing and thinking and connecting with the world around you. And it is so accessible. So you just have to let yourself kind of be absorbed by her worldview. And I think it's perfectly, if you know the song Imagine, John Lennon's song, he wrote it with Yoko. They wrote it together. He never gave her the writer's credit she deserved, and that has since kind of been rectified in the music world. The concept of that song is very much her art philosophy, and so you can see it in all her art pieces. You can see it in her music. She is a force for peace and connection. And so just an incredible woman with, who's in her 90s now and has just made this world a better place, undoubtedly. That is Yoko by David Sheff. I would really recommend it. It's very readable. Short chapters, nice collection of photographs. He had, full cooperation and permission from Yoko and Sean Lennon to write this. He gets everything in there that you really need to know if you need a good overview of her life and her work. All right, so I will check in again with you when I finish another book. Hi everyone, please excuse the wet hair, just got out of the shower. I wanted to wrap up Run Towards the Danger, Confrontations with a Body of Memory by Sarah Polley. This is an essay collection, and I really, really enjoyed this. There are 8 essays in here. I would hesitate to call this a memoir. I think some people are calling it a memoir, but I would call it, six essays in here. I would call it an essay collection, and I would keep it distinctly from a memoir, because the essays are not really connected. So there's a theme running through, which is Run Towards the Danger. So she's examining some really heavy periods in her life, some dangerous periods, if you will, for her mentally, physically, emotionally. But other than that, it's not a memoir where you are, having a more fluid experience of someone personally. They're it's an essay collection. It feels like an essay collection. I would stress that in its feeling. Sarah Polley was a child actor. I first knew her as playing the main character on a show called The Road to Avonlea, and she talks about that in here, which was really fascinating, because having watched it as a child and then learning about it and learning about her experience on the show, it was very different from what I remember of it. She also talks about suffering from a concussion and the repercussions of that in her life and the way that she made herself better. She talks about the Me Too movement, and specifically with a Canadian connection, a man who was a very public figure who she had an encounter with, and she talks about why she did not come forward when other women were coming forward about this man. which was fascinating. And she also talks about other experiences as a child actor and her relationship with her father. And her mother died when she was quite young, and kind of this benign neglect that she experienced from her father. And, kind of growing up very quickly because of that. And so, she goes into a lot of different things around that. And she also talks about motherhood and the section about the birth of her first child, in which she experienced placenta previa, gestational diabetes, and had a C-section delivery, were fascinating and very beautifully wrought about the experience of motherhood and breastfeeding. And, I don't think there can ever be enough women sharing this experience, enough people who birth sharing this experience, because it's so different for everyone. And I think, sharing it with others helps to remove the mystery, the shame, the disappointment in yourself for different things that happen. It's a good way to let go of expectations you had of how a birth could be or parenting could be. So she explores that in here beautifully. So I really enjoyed this. I think it's a really great read, and I'm very glad that I added it last minute to my TBR for the month of June. And I think I will have definitely one more book to share with you for the end of the wrap up. So I'll talk to you then. Hi, everybody. So I finished How to Get Filthy Rich in Rising Asia by Mohsin Hamid. And this is my third Mohsin Hamid novel. And I really, really love his writing. This one felt like a little bit different from the other two in the format. This came before Exit West and after The Reluctant Fundamentalist. But the beauty of Hamid's writing is that it creeps up on you, and so it's told in the second person, which I know for some people is really difficult. And it's formatted like a self-help book. And none of the characters are named. And so that keeps you at kind of a remove the way you would be if you were reading, a traditional nonfiction self-help book. But what Mohsin Hamid is able to do in his brilliant, brilliant way is he can weave the relationships that he is talking about. So in this case, we have a young man as he is coming of age. He's from a poor village and he's trying to make it, and he hustles. And there's a young woman who's also trying to make it, and she's hustling, but she hustles in a different way. I think in this case it was very much a reflection of gender. So what a man can do in this kind of nondescript Asian community versus what a woman can do. So I thought that contrast was super interesting. And so he hustles and he tries to take care of his family, and he does morally dubious things, and he gets somewhere. And then things ensue from there. So it doesn't end in this perfect life in any way. But when you get to the end, you see this beautiful weaving of relationships, this beautiful example of the complexity of being a human. So this desire to accrue and to strive, or this desire to be successful, woven together with fate and love and the kind of, I don't want to say complacency, but the kind of willingness you have to accept your life for what it becomes when you reach old age. And so it's a beautiful, it's not a long novel, but it starts when he's a young man and works its way till his death. And you really see the humanity in this man and in the woman that he loves, we'll say, for his life, and his son and his ex-wife. There's just an amazing array of, like, Mohsin Hamid is able to create a character in a very few paragraphs that feels authentic and real, and you can just like accept who that person is. And it's really, he's a great writer. Yeah, I'm very grateful for this book, and grateful to be able to see kind of the evolution of his writing. I could definitely see some parallels here between this one and Exit West, like see him formulating a kind of style and a kind of perspective that he wants to deepen and show more of. So yeah, really enjoyed this. Okay, so that is the end of my reading wrap up for June. Thank you so much for watching, and I will be back again soon with another video.